Hello and welcome to episode 32 of the Boot Nerds podcast. My name is Jeff. Jay, what's going on?
Man's good. How are you?
Pretty good. Can't complain.
Sounds good. 32 episodes in, and today we have a something that I don't know if it's gonna end up being controversial, but we're gonna have another one of those discussions where we kind of say it as it is, and I personally love those discussions. That's basically the most fun, keeping it real. So stay tuned for that. If you haven't already, though, don't forget to click the subscribe button to see all our latest episodes of the Boot Nerds podcast. If you don't want to look at our faces, which is understandable because of this, well, you can also go and listen to it while you're driving your car, mowing the lawn, or doing the dishes, whatever. If you click the link right down below the video, if you go to bootnerds.com, where you can find link to all your podcast services, where you will, of course, find your favorite boot podcasts out there. And I think only boot podcast in the world.
Yeah, this is a rumor that I've heard, and I'm not sure if you've heard the same thing, but Messi, during preseason training, he actually trained while listening to the Boot Nerds podcast all summer.
See, I saw that too while wearing these stupid AirPods that you also have. So, yeah. It's a unconfirmed rumor, but I think it sounds pretty legit, right? Mm-hmm. So don't forget to do that, and of course, don't forget to spread the word. Tell everyone you know to go and subscribe to the podcast, and of course, like the video if you enjoy what you see. We are really going to appreciate that. But to not keep you waiting any longer, I think we should jump into today's subject, which is drumroll. Now you take over.
Okay, yeah. Why? I think one of the things that people love to do these days is call out brands for copying each other.
Yes.
It's a trend that does not seem to be slowing down anytime soon. And I figured we would talk about what is and isn't a copy in the football boot industry.
Let's also mention that out of the two of us, there is also, one guy on the podcast right now who particularly enjoys to call out brands for copying each other. I'm not going to say who, but I'm just going to leave it right there.
Yeah, so I think we should start off with some more extreme examples of what is just a blatant ripoff. Stuff that we don't necessarily like to see in the football boot industry, but it does happen. And we'll start with what I think is probably the worst one, but also one of the funniest. And it sucks because it's from a brand that I guess is still reputable to a certain extent, but at one point in time was a lot more reputable. And that brand is Kappa. This being the Kappa Rattler. If you're familiar with your Nike boots, this is, look at it. It is a Magista Obra 1 that is shaped like, I don't even know what this is shaped like. You know what these remind me of, actually? I was just thinking about this before we started recording. What are those? Sorry, I'm not into like high fashion sneakers, but there's those sock sneakers that everyone is paying a ton of money for that they really like. You know what I'm talking about?
The Balenciagas.
Is that what they're called?
Yeah,
I don't know what
think
they're called.
They are.
This has the exact same shape as those.
So the Balenciagas are also copies of the Nike Magista. You heard it here first on the Boot Nerds podcast. What's that on the inside? Is that a Scorpio?
That is a scorpion. It's called the Kappa Rattler. So you'd think maybe they'd put a rattlesnake or something, but no, they put a scorpion because that just makes more sense. Again, clearly just a boot made to look like the Magista Obra 1. Absolutely.
Leverage the hype. Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible in terms of quality. It fits horrendously. They fit like a pair of like work boots or something like that. I'm not even sure what you would describe this as. I mean, you could just see based on the shape, just brutal. And it sucks to see stuff like this. I'm not sure what the logic is. Do they think people are going to be super interested and actually want to buy this? I don't know.
Yes, I think they do.
But
I actually think, but they should go and hang their head in shame. This is disgraceful. You shouldn't be that obvious when you copy people.
Yeah, it's really bad.
It's so bad.
Here's another great example. This one is probably the more recent one that I think I've shown on the channel. This from a brand called Concord, which is based in Mexico. And I got a lot of flack for this one because there are a lot of people in Mexico that wear Concord boots. Concord being a legit brand. I understand
Absolutely.
that. I've seen some of the boots that they've made and they look good, but there's no denying that this is just a straight up ripoff of the Adidas Predator. And a not very good one at that.
Concord was the brand that Cuauhtemoc Blanco wore back in the day, right?
I believe so.
But yeah, they do actually make legit boots, and I believe that some of them are actually quite good. If I've heard correctly from some of our other boot friends. But yeah, these are just, it's one of those decisions where you just wonder what happened, guys. Did you run out of ideas, or was it like an internal joke at a Friday bar that turned out to, actually come to fruition? I mean, what happened? It's just, there's so many elements, and even the colorway is just, it screams Predator. So again, if you got to copy and steal someone's ideas, at least make it less obvious that you've actually been inspired heavily. It's just not cool, right?
Yeah, it's pretty rough one. And then I guess we'll finish off with probably the most famous one, the Joma Champion Max, which is a combination of the Superfly 5 upper and the sole plate taken directly from the X line at the time. A sprint frame, basically. Again, pretty inexcusable. Joma, another very reputable company that makes really good stuff, but then they make the decision to do stuff like this. And this is not the first, I would say, copycat boot from the Joma brand. They're pretty notorious for this over the last couple of years. But this one is definitely the most obvious and definitely the most funny as well.
And speaking of, we have discussed the boot just on the last episode, but there is also the new Lotto Zhero Gravity 3s, which are like basically Pred ripoffs.
But this is done unlike the three previous examples, I think this is the one that this actually performs the part. This was made to be a legitimately good pair of football boots. It's just not the most original.
But it's still not okay. I mean, it might be a really good football boot, but it's still not okay because someone else came up with the idea. But I agree, those are blatant ripoffs, and it shouldn't happen. It's never nice to see. And those are the examples that everyone can really see. It's where it comes from. There's also one more example. From it's a bit further back in the day, one of the worst football boots I've ever tried, the Joma Fit 100 Lights, which are basically, if you take a good look at it, you can kind of see, it's a bit out of focus here, but you can kind of see how all the stitch patterns is the exact same as the second generation of the F50 Adizero in leather. So they basically tried to copy that with a synthetic leather Joma boot that has an eagle in lime green on the,
That's always a good introduction. This is one of the worst boots I've ever worn. I love that. But you know what? It's too bad because Joma, I remember when I first started doing videos, some of the first Joma boot I ever tried was the Joma Total Fit. Remember they were made out of one piece of leather?
Great boot.
Really good boots.
Yeah, Pepe Reina wore those.
Yeah, really good boots, really good looking, super interesting, very unique. I don't know what happened to that. I guess they just decided, let's try to copy other brands and push sales that way rather than actually doing our own thing, which sucks, but that's the direction that they chose to go in.
Yeah, so they went to from Total Fit to Fit 100 Light, which is a boot I'm never going to wear ever again. So
perfect.
That's how it goes.
Hey, don't start throwing boots, Jay. It's a path you don't want to go down.
No boots were harmed. No boots were harmed in this episode. I have thrown this before, and it's okay. So, but obviously there are a lot of other boots out there that aren't blatant ripoffs, and this is basically going to be the main discussion today because there are things going on in the business that everyone will of course follow the trends. The current trends, which means that at some point everyone will go in the same direction. And I know that there are a lot of people on your channel, on Unisport as well, that are calling out brands for basically stealing ideas from other brands when it comes to technology that is hype or the talk of town at a given point, right? So maybe we should go over and discuss a little bit if that's copying or what it is and how unacceptable it is. Because there's a lot of stuff that's gone on over the years, right?
Yeah, I think we should start with what is the earliest example, And like, I think what most people consider to be like the OG in terms of modern football boots is probably the Copa Mundial, right? The original Copa Mundial. Everything in terms of modern boots is some variation of that. So you could look at something like a Mizuno Morelia and say, oh, it's kind of a copy of a Copa Mundial. Similar concept, obviously very similar materials, similar construction, similar look. But is that really a copy or just a variation of a successful design?
See, that's the thing, because the Copa Mundial didn't invent leather boots. It didn't invent that way of constructing boots, the way of making the seams on the forefoot. It didn't, it was a pioneering boot, but that was the way you made football boots back then, with some variations of that. So it didn't completely change the game. It was just, in the sense of how football boots were constructed, but it did. It was it was a landmark boot. So I wouldn't call the Morelia a copy of that. It was just the way you made boots back then.
Yeah, no, that
one of the only
sense.
ways you made. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that what the industry has turned into is whatever is the first boot to do something successfully, something that's well received, everything that comes after that original boot has this perception of potentially being a copy, depending on what your opinion is.
Right. And I understand that notion. I mean, but is every boot coming after another landmark boot? I know we're skipping some models here, but is every synthetic boot in modern days, is that a copy of the first Nike Mercurials from 1998? That was the first boot to introduce a synthetic leather upper. I mean, is that the case? No. That's difficult to say. Yeah. But we have seen some boots, for instance, the Predator in 1994, that did spark some sort of trend in the industry where we saw that, shot elements were just becoming a thing, right? And it's left a mark even on today. So is every boot with some sort of texture or shot element a copy of the Pred? I wouldn't say so, no. But there's always a but.
Yeah, we definitely see brands respond to the success of certain products, right? And I think it's fair to say that the T90 Laser series was a direct response to the Predator. And yes, the T90 line existed prior to the Laser, but it didn't include rubberized striking elements up until that point. Adidas was doing really well with that. They were pretty much the only ones offering that type of tech. And Nike used the same concept, a boot focused around shooting the ball, but I think they did it in a really interesting way that I can't remember anybody saying that the T90 Laser 1 was a copy of a Predator. It was such a unique thing, even though it utilized the same concept.
And that's the thing, one thing is utilizing the same concept, the same technology being available to you, the same knowledge, the same know-how. And the other thing is straight up copying the way a boot is constructed. So this Nike took they took another approach. They used their own research, their own idea of what a power and shooting boot should be. And then they made this. So I think this is absolutely legit. This is not a Predator copy. It follows the same trend and it has the same, should we say, idea behind it of giving the player more power and control when he shoots. But that's about it.
Yeah. Maybe kind of off topic here, but a little bit of an opinion because it just kind of came to my head now. Is the T90 Laser 1 partially responsible for the Predator series dying initially?
No.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. I think the Predator series is responsible for the Predator dying because they simply didn't innovate enough and they screwed up too many models, particularly the X, the 10. That it just, it didn't follow the times. And I feel the same thing actually happened to the T90 Laser series, but I don't think that the Laser was such a big success that you can say it caused the death of the Pred. Where do you stand on this?
Well, here's I'm just thinking of how my impression was of the T90 Laser 1 as a kid. Because I was really into Predators at that point in time prior to that coming out. But then once Nike came out with the T90 Laser series, it was so visual. It didn't matter how good the boots were, because I think you can argue that the early T90 lasers weren't technically as good as the Predators available at the time, which would have been the Absolute and the Power Swerve, that era. Those were better boots. But because the T90 laser, especially with the marketing that Nike was putting out at the time, I didn't have an interest in the Predators anymore as a kid. I have to be honest. Like, I just really was so focused on T90 Laser 1, and then Laser 2 came out, and it was like another even more extreme design, and Laser 3 even more extreme than that. Like, I really bought into that, the visual element of a T90 laser, because I can tell you, prior to the laser series, I was not interested in any T90 model at all over a pair of Predators.
I guess, you make a good point. And to some extent, yes, I think you can say that the T90 series affected the Predator into maybe changing its focus into something that eventually killed the line. Because the way Nike took the laser and the direction they took it maybe caused Adidas to rethink their direction for the Predator and to make it more similar to the T90. So they had the Predator name. This is probably what the consumer wanted. And to kind of make up for the fact that Nike arguably had a stronger visual identity on the lasers and, frankly, better marketing behind it, right? They had to approach that style of making boots. For instance, if we look at the Predator X, that is one of the Preds, I would argue, that looks the most like the lasers did back in the day. It was the least aggressive of the of the zones back then, so I think you can argue, but I don't think it was the direct cause of death, to be a bit dramatic about it.
But Jay, that's kind of what we're almost talking about in terms of brands copying each other to a certain extent. They had this successful Predator series that was so unique. Nike did their own spin on it. It was pretty well received for the most part. And then based on that little bit of success, Adidas felt the need, even though the T90 Laser was a response to their own design and concept, hey, we should make something like the T90. So they, like, if you want to say Nike copied Adidas, Adidas copied Nike back, and they didn't necessarily do a great job at it because, again, the Predator X was, like you said, definitely a response to what Nike was doing with the T90 Laser series, just not particularly well done, and they kind of alienated the people that were still part of that Predator fan base, right?
At least I would say down the line, because after the X we had the Adi Power, which in my opinion is an amazing boot, but they kind of messed up with the Lethal Zones boots that really, in my opinion, kind of turned into a T90 Laser CTR 360 hybrid, where kind of felt like Adi didn't know where they wanted to take the Predator line, and then of course they kind of came back on track with the Instinct and then killed it all off.
But again, it's such a response to what's doing well at the time, right?
Yes, and I think this is basically the core of the discussion here, because I don't necessarily think that brands go out and they copy each other's ideas, because I mean, to be fair, it's pretty blatantly clear whenever Kappa makes the Rattler, right? And I think it's more it's more the, should we say, the end result of what's happening in the industry. So, of course, Nike were the first ones to make a high-cut boot, and obviously Adi had to follow on the whole knit and high-cut wave, and they did. But wasn't it going to come eventually that knit was just going to take over football? We'd seen it already at the Olympics in 2012 that Adi and Nike were fighting, fly knit versus prime knit even back then. So prime knit was eventually going to make its way into football. Does that mean that just because Nike came first with the high cut boots, does that mean that they were, Adidas copied Nike? Technically, Adidas had the first knitted boot in the prime knit Sambas. So, who's right and wrong here?
You're right. It's such a, but again, it's kind of like what I said. Everyone wants to be first to like, it's almost like when you put up a new YouTube video and there's like 18 people who are really fighting to be the first comment. Yeah. That was the case with knitted boots, because everyone, obviously industry insiders knew that the Magista Obra 1 was coming and it was going to be a big deal. And wasn't it like the day before Adidas unveiled that PrimeKnit FS concept boot thing.
It was the morning of the release of the Magista.
Right? It was like it was like as close as possible, but technically first. And they never ended up putting that boot out. That was a concept boot that it kind of just blew my mind. I'm like, how is this legitimately going to be a real product? Because it just made no sense at all. It looked terrible. Like there's no way you saw that and said, oh, this is going to be the future of football boots.
I've actually seen the PrimeKnit FS in real life. My videographer at the time, he wore it even, and it looked weird. It felt pretty cool, but it looked really, really weird.
Wow! So you actually had it in person?
Yeah, I've actually seen quite a few of the samples of the PrimeKnit footy sock and the 2.0. I don't know. It did the rounds at one point. The green slightly lower version kind of looked like actually an early A16 Plus. It looked absolutely terrible, but yeah, that was a fun day. I was at the launch of the Magista, and then suddenly, everyone starts to panic. All the other retailers and media, they're running around trying to figure out what on earth is going on, and it was crazy.
Well, I'm actually very interested in this because that's been a boot that has fascinated me for a long time. The FS, was the sock, like the giant extended collar sock thing, was it like the same thickness as like the normal collars we're used to seeing now?
It was definitely it was slightly thicker than the one on the Magista. It was, but the biggest thing was that it wasn't super elasticated. So it was basically just this like loose extension piece running up your foot. So it wasn't like it looked more like a rubber boot. More than anything, it is a bit. But I mean, the shape of the toe was very nice. It was super low cut, and it really reminded me of what the whole shape of the F50 Zamba from 2014 looked like. So imagine that super pointy toe box. Imagine that in a knit execution. It looked very, very good, and it was super, super thin. And then they had like this, almost a bit like on the Nemesis, the current Nemesis. They had this like internal support band, also made out of not very elasticated knit, sitting on the inside. So, it wouldn't have worked in real life. It wouldn't have worked on the pitch, but it was pretty fun to actually see, the beast in real life.
That's very interesting. Like, I'm curious about. Was it heavy? Because there's so much extra material. Like there's like 2 uppers worth of knitted material on that boot, basically.
It wasn't as heavy as I expect. Of course, it had some weight to it, but I was pretty surprised when I held it in hand. It was back when they launched the A16. It was the 15 PrimeKnits. The red ones. We also did a piece actually, looking at the journey of knitted boots up until that point, where we actually had another sample of the Footy Sock FS in the studio, which had more red on it, which was also very, very interesting. I actually compared it to the Ace 15 PrimeKnits, and it wasn't that much heavier, to be honest. Also, the Ace 15 PrimeKnit had the heaviest outsole in the world, like 37 studs or something. But it wasn't at a point where I thought, man, this is just gonna tank. Weight wise, it could have worked. Yeah.
Really, I was just so confused because that was at a time when the whole taping your socks all the way up to your knee thing was very popular, and FIFA was getting out of hand because people just all had like white tape covering their socks, whether the kit was blue or red or whatever it was. And they had to like start coloring in the tape until they could manage to get colored tape.
Yeah.
And I always thought, I'm like, how, like, if you're like, they showed the black boots as the concept, right? If your club team wears white socks, this covers all the socks. And then I was always like, where do the shin guards go? Right? Like it was a concept that like made absolutely no sense as an actual functional pair of football boots. Like I understand that you could put them on and play in them, but to actually wear them in a match, it didn't make any sense to me. So
no,
I always thought that was a really funny response from Adidas.
And the funny thing is that it wasn't a response. I mean, yeah, they knew it came out, but
Oh, it was a response. Don't tell me it wasn't a response. That was totally on purpose. That was a response.
Of course it was. It was basically to mess with Nike's big day. But I mean, then we had to wait 2 years for Adidas to really make a proper response, bringing out their first high-cut football boot in the Ace. That, on the other hand, then also gave us laceless technology. So it kind of softened the blow of them giving us a high-cut boot. And at that point, people had more or less accepted that, well, this is what we're going to get. We'd had the Superfly 4, the Hypervenom 2s that were all high-cut. So it was more or less, the hype around and the uniqueness of having a high-cut boot had kind of died down. So Adidas made the clever move of waiting a little bit and then adopting the technology. So was the Ace a copy of the Magista? It was high-cut. That's the same concept, but I don't really think so, because at that point, high-cut boots had just become a standard of the market. Do you know what I mean?
No, it's definitely a response to the Magista. There's no question about that.
Absolutely.
But my question is, do you consider the PureControl to be a copy of the 26 Lotto Zhero Gravity, being that was the first laceless boot? Because this is one of those situations where Lotto hasn't, for the most part, amongst the average consumer, gotten the credit for being first to the game with the whole laceless thing, based on the Lotto Zhero Gravity not actually being very successful.
Of course, once a technology is already available, or some sort of execution is already available, and someone else goes out to do it, you can argue that it's a copy, right? Mm-hmm. When they made brakes for cars, everyone started applying brakes for cars. I mean, are they copying? To a certain extent, yes, of course, you can always argue. But I think, when you make the execution so significantly different, it's not really a copy, is it?
No,
or is it?
I totally agree with you. And I think it's also worth mentioning, and nobody talks about this, is the PureControl is not actually the first laceless boot from Adidas. I don't know if you remember, I think it was in 2007. It would have been an F50.7.
Yeah.
You could buy a laceless upper. You had to buy them separately, and barely any stores had them. I don't think anyone actually bought any of them.
They were green, weren't they? Just as this.
There was a green colorway. I think they only made it in one color. And even, I remember I actually had some F50.6s at the time, and I remember looking online and being like, wow, that seems really dumb. I don't want that. And everyone seemed to ignore it. But look at that. Look at this. So many years later, it's become such a big thing.
Yeah, it's fun, right? And basically, it must have been because back in the day, with the whole tuned system, Adidas they were really experimenting, and I thought maybe, okay, they saw the relative success of the Zhero Gravity, at least the first 3 generations, then they kind of messed it up with the Ultras that were really, really bad, to be fair. But I think it was just a response to just do something, see if it worked, and clearly it didn't. But what's the conclusion here? Is the PureControl a copy of the Magista?
No, definitely not.
Right.
100% no.
Okay. Is the Magista a copy of the F50 Adizero Samba? Primed Samba?
No, not a chance. If anything, like, a lot of people like to comment on PrimeKnit being a copy of Flyknit or vice versa. The interesting thing about PrimeKnit is when it first came out, and if you had the F50 Samba, the concept of PrimeKnit when it initially launched was completely different from Flyknit. The only thing they had in common is that they were both knitted. But originally, PrimeKnit was a yarn with like a plastic infused in the yarn. They would knit it into the upper, and then they would apply heat to certain areas to melt the plastic and create stiffness and structure that way.
Yes.
If you ever wore the Adidas Samba, then you know that it was for being a knitted upper, it was a very plasticky knitted upper. Like, it was pretty much rock hard. Let's be honest, right? It wasn't a Flyknit upper. It wasn't very sock-like in any way. And Adidas pretty much completely ditched that concept on all PrimeKnit products, and it kind of evolved into more of a soft, elasticated mesh type material like Flyknit.
And this also goes to show that just because you use, I mean, it works like this, that obviously the brands, they develop a technology, they have ideas of how they want to build a boot, but they also need to go to their suppliers, right? So obviously, whatever kind of technology is available at the suppliers is what, both brands can do. So unless the brands, they develop something like Nike will do in the Innovation Kitchen, they develop a way of applying certain materials to already existing manufacturing ways, there will be something that the manufacturers can do and that they can't do. And once they've started to be able to do knitted stuff on a general scale, like then it will be, as we're seeing right now, it's available to all brands that can make a proper execution. So when does, and that's my question here, when does something, an innovation, a proprietary technology like Flyknit, and that way of constructing a boot upper, when does that become generally available without being a copy? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think there aren't too many examples of like physical designs being copied, especially amongst the big brands. It's usually small brands doing these goofy things. But when you're talking about specific technologies and concepts, I definitely think there are some cases of copying in such a way where it's still different, but it's very clearly a copy. I think a really good example, the Flyknit, PrimeKnit, knitted upper thing, I just think it's too general. Like, are we going to call every mesh-based synthetic upper after the Phantom 1 a copy of the Phantom 1? Like, it's just not, it's too general. Like, everything is either mesh-based or knitted-based now, and that seems to be the way of the future. And the brands, I'm sure, are very happy about that because I think it's a lot cheaper for them to build boots that way versus using natural materials like leather. But I think of ACC, and I know we've made fun of it. I've made fun of it. I don't want to pin that on you, Jay. I've made fun of it a lot. But to me, there's no question that NSG from Adidas, nonstop grip, that was a direct response to the success of ACC.
Absolutely.
And then Puma had their own thing too. What was it called? Grip-Tex?
Oh yeah, Grip-Tex, yeah.
Grip-Tex, is that what it was? Another thing, it was barely noticeable. All of them are barely noticeable, but they all did that based on the success of ACC. Obviously, the Puma and Adidas variants didn't really stick around that much, but that's something that does happen within the industry. Like right now, and I think we mentioned this on one of the 31 other episodes of the podcast, but if Nike were to come out with a laceless boot now, it would be, I personally think, a social media nightmare in terms of people calling them out for copying.
Oh, it would be, that would be basically copying out. It's not going to happen simply because they would get slaughtered on social media. But your point about, ACC and NSG and the Grip-Tex is interesting because those were different ways of achieving the same end goal. So NSG were these little dots. It wasn't like the layer of and then the treatment of the material that ACC appears to be, right? So yes, the end goal was the same, and they did it to have some sort of counter offer to what Nike had in ACC. But is it a copy if it's done in a different way?
No, I don't think so, but it's a direct response for sure. I think it's so hard to like come up with a really good idea and then say this is ours and nobody else can do it. It's not the right way of doing things. I think it was a logical direction for Nike to say, hey, how can we improve our football boots even further? Hey, a lot of the games are played in wet weather. Let's make the boots better in terms of performing in wet weather conditions. So that's such a good idea. I don't see other brands wouldn't want to try to do the same thing. But then there's stuff that's so specific. Like, can you imagine if Nike or Adidas did a boot with NetFit technology from Puma?
I was going to bring up NetFit. Upper, yeah. I mean,
right? There's certain things that you can come out with as a brand that are so specific to you that there's really no way. Like, here's another even like extreme example. What if when the Predator still had striking elements, what if they came out with a Predator that had a giant target striking element somewhere on the boot?
Yeah, it wouldn't work, would it?
Right? That's a copy.
Yeah.
At that point, you're copying.
Right. But did Mizuno copy the Laser when they did the Wave Igniters with the Mukaiten panel?
No, that never even crossed my mind.
But it's still a shooting element, right?
You're right. Yeah, it's similar, but not the same. Yeah.
No. Another thing we kind of discussed is the X 16 and 17 versus Phantom Vision construction, was basically the same way of putting the boot together, where you have like an inner piece and then an outer shell with the lasers in between. But is this a copy of the X? I would say absolutely not. But it's just
there's only so many ways to do. As soon as you do a lace cover, you're going to have some kind of similarities in terms of construction when compared to other boots.
And that's my point here. There are only so many ways you can build a football boot, and you can't have new innovations all the flipping time. So unless it's something that's really completely unique and can't be done in any other way without being a blatant copy, like NetFit, for instance, you can't have the lace holes integrated into the upper, as far as I can tell, at least right now. Maybe that's why I'm not a boot designer, but you can't do that without straight up copying NetFit. And people would really call Adi and Nike out, especially if they did that. And maybe it's because Puma are too big for them to really not venture into that territory. And perhaps Lotto fading from back in 2006 up until this point made it okay for Adidas to kind of go in and steal and take credit for their laceless innovation, so to speak.
Yeah, I think it has to be a pretty extreme design element for it to be really called a copy. And I'm not just talking about visual things, because I think it's the visual of the Predator versus the new Lotto Solista that gets people.
Yeah.
Because ultimately they're both similar boots in terms of overall construction, but so are a lot of knitted boots with a mid-cut design, right? You can't, we just established that that's not a copy. But if it looks the same, you can't really argue that at that point. But when you have like these extreme technologies, like I'm thinking of like the Lotto Twist and Go stud, super distinctive. The Nike Sense stud on the Superfly, super distinctive.
Yeah,
like I was even thinking Flywire technology. But Puma kind of did Flywire technology on that one weirdo variant of the Puma King SL. Remember that?
Yep, I do remember.
They kind of like you can achieve very similar designs without necessarily being called out for copying. I think it's just, it just sucks that I guess it's become a copycat industry for the most part. It's hard to create something that is truly distinctive.
Yeah,
that's what I think is missing with the modern football boot industry.
But as long as you package it differently, it seems to be okay.
Yeah, for the most part. Like I'm just thinking of like really distinctive designs that like if Nike did something with a band construction for the upper, like the Nemesis, like.
Oh yeah, and speaking of the Nemesis, right? The new split tooling. I know they claim that, yes, we did it back with the Mania and all that stuff, and they're right. I mean, I'm not going to argue with that. But it just seems convenient that right when the Mercurial starts going split tooling, the Nemesis goes split tooling for to just look sexier. I mean, it can't be a coincidence. And yes, Adi kind of owned that because they did it with the Mania back in the days. But, I mean, they haven't done it for so long, and now Nike are doing it, and they're jumping on the, I don't know.
Yeah, you get a lot of that. I don't blame the companies for doing that, but yeah, I mean, I would rather not see it. Quick question, just kind of off topic again. Split soles, are you for or against them?
I don't mind them, but they just don't do anything. I mean, it looks kind of cool, but for me, I'd rather just save the money and just rather have a fully one piece. So
yeah,
you?
Like my opinion is it's an overcomplicated way of doing a sole plate. Somebody asked me, I did a Q&A video recently, and someone asked me because, and I think you kind of have a similar opinion, the new Mercurial, it's pretty close to being the perfect football boot in terms of what it sets out to achieve. It's very difficult to criticize.
Uh-huh.
But if you were to improve one thing, what would you improve?
The outsole.
right? Like all I was thinking is like, if you took the outsole from the Vapor 11 Superfly 5 and put it on that boot, is it not better?
Yes.
It's also lighter.
Well, I mean, the new studs are pretty good, but yeah,
okay,
if you made
you could put that on the sole plate.
Yeah, but if we took the one-piece plate from the Vapor 11, then hell yeah, I would definitely take that, simply because, this on the inside, they've wrapped the Flyknit around the insole board, which is like, it's still a part of the sole. It just doesn't sit on the outside, but it's still there. It works the same way. So they've basically just split it up into two and put the outer parts on top of the Flyknit and sandwiched it in between. So it's a cool story, but it's nothing more than a cool story, bro.
Yeah, it's just extra layers of material and bulk. I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just figured I'd bring that up. But
yeah. Anyway.
So in general, are all the brands copying each other?
To a certain extent, yes. But is it a result of flows in the market? Absolutely, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing the Kappa Rattler and the Joma Champion Max, in which case you should hang your head in shame. But I think we should leave it at that. Of course, we want to hear all you guys' comments and thoughts on this matter. Do the brands copy each other in today's market? Leave us your thoughts right down below. What you can also do is leave your questions, if you have any of those, right down below, because we are going to answer the best of them. And we're going to do that right now. But before, Josh, we get into it, I just basically want to talk about something that recently released that's very, very close to my heart.
Okay, let's do it.
It is the first Nike Geo Merlin from 2001. 2000 and 2001. It basically dropped, launched on, was used on the very first day of the Premier League back in 2000, 19th of August, my birthday, by the way. And it was, it marked the first time that Nike and the Premier League did a ball together. And they've been together now for 20 years. A little over 20 years, and it's still fantastic.
It's a very cool ball.
This is a remake, right? But a complete. It's not a remake. It's a re-release of the ball, but because it's made exactly like it was back in the day. Even smells the same way. Put together the same way. Has the same sticky coating on it. As far as I can tell, nothing's really changed.
Really? Okay, I've got a question, and I'm curious if you have the same kind of, I guess. I wouldn't consider either of us to be old, but I consider this to be an old guy opinion. Are those classic balls better than the modern ones?
No.
You don't think so?
Do they look better?
Okay, what would you... I shouldn't word it like that. What would you rather play with, the modern balls or the old ones?
The modern balls. But
really?
I know where you're going, Josh, and because the older balls have this special weight to them. They have a special ping and a special feeling when you kick them. And I think this and the old the Favor Nova, some of the other later generation Geo Merlins, to a certain extent, or some of the T90, what were they called? The Arrows. The one with the big circle on. Some of those old balls, yes, they had something to them. But I did a video last year around the World Cup, comparing all the old World Cup balls to the Telstar, and I really enjoyed, especially the Telstar and the Brazuca, a lot more than the older balls, simply because the whole padding on the ball felt a little bit better and it felt more responsive, simply. And it still had stability, it had good weight to it, but it felt easier to play with than the older balls.
You're right. I think the new balls definitely come off your foot cleaner, more consistent to a certain extent, and maybe feel. I don't want to say that they feel softer, but they definitely don't feel as hard as some of the older balls do. But I kind of miss kicking a ball and it feeling like a ball. You know what I'm saying? Like with the modern balls, if you had a bag of all the latest match balls, every single one you kick is going to have a completely different feel.
Yes.
And that wasn't the case back in the day. And
they were all just rock solid.
Right? They were all like, you kicked the ball and you knew what it was going to feel like. And that's what I hated kind of growing up playing competitive soccer, especially in the later years when a lot of these more crazy match balls became a thing. Like we'd play in a tournament and you'd play 3 games in one day. And every single game you're using a different ball that felt completely different. And I always found that to be super annoying. I wish it was like the same ball all the time, Stop changing it.
But this was also different back in the day because this was apparently, according to Nike and the marketing material, the roundest ball ever. It was rounder and better than everyone else. It's this ball.
Isn't that amazing that we're so past that now? Back in what year was that come out? Sorry,
2000.
2000. In the year 2000, the selling feature of a top end match ball was that it's round. Amazing.
But with those words, I just simply wanted to bring it up because I love the Geo Merlin. Let's jump into some questions here. Again, I have a lot. We're going to try and answer as many of them. I think we have like 10 minutes. And we're just going to save those for the ones we won't make today for next time. So without further ado, regularly here on the channel, Paul Kim, which football star would you like to see join the Mizuno brand and wear the Neo Beta? For such an underrated brand whose main funnel of cash may not be football boots, true, I can only imagine what Mizuno would do if they had the marketing star power behind their football boots. So, which player?
It's a good question. Okay, let me just change up the question a little bit. If you were to put Cristiano Ronaldo or Messi or even a Neymar in a Mizuno Morelia Neo 2 Beta.
Yep.
Are they selling out within 24 hours?
No, but they're selling out faster.
You think do you think they sell a lot more boots, period?
Yes, but not significantly more.
Not significant. See, I think a player like that would make a really big impact. Maybe not Messi. Maybe not Messi. For whatever reason, the man just can't sell boots. I don't know why. But Cristiano Ronaldo and or Neymar, I think could make a pretty big impact.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think the best, if they were to like realistically sign a really big name, I think the best guy they could sign would probably be Mbappe.
He's the future, and he is the essence of speed these days. But he's completely unobtainable, right?
Locked up to Nike. But what I like about Mbappe is he seems to be a little bit of a boot nerd. Like he actually likes it. You could tell. Like he gets the GS360 a couple days early and he's posting it on Instagram even though he's not supposed to. I like that.
It was pretty amazing, yeah. It was pretty flipping amazing, and refers to vapors as vapes as they did back in the day. Apparently, it was pretty cool. I don't know who I'd put in the Neo Betas. I'd probably have someone young and quick, obviously, but I don't know who would be available to go there.
They should sign you, Jay.
Absolutely, young and fast. You know how it goes now. But who seriously? Who could they take that would be available?
I think Gareth Bale. I don't know what his contract situation is like.
but I don't think that any one of the players that would be within reason to sign for them. I don't think they'd make too big of a difference. I mean, they'd have to go.
What about this? What about Zlatan?
Yeah. Yeah. No, he's too old.
You don't think Zlatan holding up the Mizuno Morelia Neo 2 Beta and saying this is the greatest football boot ever and it's good enough for Zlatan that wouldn't draw a ton of interest?
Yeah, I think it would draw a ton of interest, but I don't think he would necessarily take it home, if you know what I mean. Like, I think Zlatan 5 years ago, yes, definitely. But now, I'm sorry. So I don't think Mizuno are gonna ever win in that department because the only maybe 5 players who could really make a difference, I don't think they're within reason for them to sign because they would take too much money compared to what the reward would be.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with you.
Matt Pierce, Jared and Jay, what are your thoughts on the trend in the pro scene in which players to the likes of Luka Modric and I'm just going to throw this in here, what's he called? Brozovic from Milan remove the lasers from the Vapor 13 Elites? I know Jared hasn't expressed his strong feelings towards this modification in the past, but is it any different on the Vapor 13? And no, it is not. It's still stupid.
Next question.
Cameron Matthews, what is the purpose of the Puma MG sole found on the Future? Obviously, you can get this like the standard FGAG sole on the Future, and then you can also get the MG sole, which basically it's a lot of little extra studs. Think Adidas Ace 15. They're everywhere. And that would be simply to give you even more pressure absorption points compared to the normal FGAG pattern if the ground is really hard.
If the ground is hard, I would say that's a better stud pattern for use on artificial grass as well.
Yes.
Yeah, it's MG multi-ground, right? That's also only available in Europe, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
but it's a good start pattern, and as Josh says, it's optimized for artificial grass, and especially the older generations. These days, you can wear FGAG on 4G AG pitches, but definitely if you have the money and you want something that's tailor made for AG, the MG from Puma is pretty damn good. Right. Vincent Gamarillo. Should I buy the Superfly 7 or the Phantom Venoms? I've worn Mercurials most of my life. Will there be a big change in feel and touch if I go for the Venoms? Yes and no. Josh, care to explain?
Definitely a difference. But the Venom is still a pretty thin pair of football boots. So you're not necessarily going to be missing out on a barefoot feel, I would say. Maybe through the striking element area, there's a little bit more bulk to the upper. But in general, they're still really thin boots, not as thin as the Mercurials. And I think if you're a fan of the Mercurial concept, the new Superfly or the new Mercurial in general, you're probably going to be really happy with.
Yeah.
But Venom is a great boot if you're looking to try something a little different.
It's one of those boots that if you want to switch it up for the sake of trying something else, but you don't want to venture too far away from the feel of the Mercurials, the Venom's probably the go-to boot right now.
Yeah,
I would say
I agree with you on the trying something new thing, but I also feel like this latest generation of Mercurial feels pretty new in comparison to even the Vapor 12 and Superfly 6.
Yeah.
Like it's a pretty cool experience, that new one.
Take my advice and stay with the Superfly 7. It's the best boot on the market right now. The Vapor is, but yeah.
Yeah. Plus the extra ankle support with the Superfly.
Don't listen to this man. M News some 001. I love your show, guys. Thank you so much. Please keep them coming. We will. I know most of what you do is boots, but could you review the Adidas Smart Ball pros and cons and whether or not you think it has value in training shots on goal? Thanks, Matt. So Matt, the Adidas. Josh, have you tried the Adidas Smart Ball?
I have, a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
There's a video on my channel. I think I have the most viewed review of that ball on YouTube. I could be wrong on that, but
wow, show off.
Not to brag. But
uncalled for.
Yeah,
Wow.
but it's up there if you want to go watch it.
Yeah, you also used to be the biggest soccer reviews channel on YouTube.
I did used to be.
Yeah, it used to be.
Now there's these guys, they just like interview all these pros.
Yeah, idiots.
Came out of nowhere from
this exotic country.
It's like Legoland or something.
Well, fair play. Anyway, the Smart Ball. I wouldn't bother. Cause yes, it gives you some numbers and some sort of advice, but I don't feel that the measurements you get are precise enough. I can't really use that in terms of improving my shots. It's a fun toy, but it's not really precise enough, in my opinion.
It is. I agree with you. It's a fun toy, and it's cool to see some statistics. I would say for the most part, it's fairly accurate based on like what you can see. Like if you shoot a really hard shot, it seems to translate in the statistics that you get. The problem I have with Smart Ball is that you can only train free kicks, and I think that's one of the most useless things to really dedicate a lot of time to training.
And training free kicks, whatever data the Smart Ball puts out isn't going to help you significantly in improving. Only training free kicks will. So honestly, don't bother. Buy a couple of good select brilliant supers instead.
Like it's cool if you can find one for cheap and it's a good price and you want to play with one, great. But I think there's an argument to be made that for how long it takes to set up every single shot, you could probably take 10 shots with a normal ball and get way more practice in. But hey, it's too logical of an opinion, I guess.
Yes. Okay. So 2 more questions here. One very quick for me, just because information. Dave, 126 at Unisport. Why have you stopped selling C6 agility shin guards since Generation 2? Didn't they sell that well, or what was the reason for that? And it was basically that you guys out there didn't buy enough of the C6 agility shin pads. So unfortunately, the guys up above are sitting on the money, making decisions. They decided that it wasn't a good business, which sucks because they're the best shin pads around. So yeah,
Yeah, that's how retail works.
Yeah, sadly so. So I'm afraid if you have to, you got to go to c6agility.com and buy your pair, which you should do because they're the best out there. Just saying.
And I think if you use coupon code BOOTNERDS, you get a discount, no?
You still do.
You do.
You do.
So go check it out.
That's some inside advice from Uncle Jay. Okay, our last one here, also from our man Paul Kim. What's your justification to your significant other or yourself to have so many boots? I've started accumulating boots over the last 3 years, 16 pairs, and while I rotate them, there are some that stay on the shelf. My logic was that rotating them will preserve them, but even I can admit that I have a problem. Or not. And Paul, just to let you know that 16 pairs is not having a problem. It's only getting started. So, yeah. Well, how do you justify it to yourself, my man? Because you've got way more boots than me.
I started my channel as a justification to buy a whole bunch of football boots. That was like, hey, how can I was already working at a store, and I'm like, how can I justify spending my entire paycheck on everything we have in this store?
Yeah.
And that was my way of doing it. And looking back, I mean, obviously I think it was a good decision, but then I also got into sneakers.
Yeah.
And that got really, really out of hand. And now I don't feel like I still send me to any sneaker store and I'm happy to look around. But now I'm just so much more like, okay, do I really need those? No, probably not. Am I realistically going to wear them? No, probably not. Okay, I'm not going to buy them.
Yeah,
We're going back like 5 years. I just buy them all.
Yeah. See, my girlfriend is probably only putting up with my stupid obsession because I keep most of my boots at the studio. In the studio at the shelf here. I don't have too many boots at home. I have my sneakers though, and she flipping hates them because I'm that guy, even though I realize I don't need them. I'm not gonna wear them that much, but I just buy them because I can't help myself. I'm that guy. So yeah, I think she thinks it's a pretty stupid thing, to be honest. But
you know what? I think, Jay, it's an illness.
Yes.
An uncured illness.
But
I'm not sure.
But it's an illness that pays the bills. So thank you guys for wanting to listen to whatever we have to say. Because, otherwise this would just be for nothing. So yeah.
You know what I find myself doing sometimes? Like there's like a pair of running shoes or basketball shoes that I totally don't need them at all. Yeah. But there's like some like very minor tech element that's associated to that product that I'm like, hey, maybe this will be relevant to the football boot industry at some point in time. So like maybe I could say like 2 or 3 years from now, oh yeah, I wore this one basketball shoe that Nike put out that nobody cared about that had this one thing. And I tried it way before this happened and like it's relevant to what I do, even though it's totally not. But I do that. I do that a lot.
Whoever you marry, Josh, is going to be a very lucky woman. And I think with those golden words, it's time to end episode 32 of the Boot Nerds podcast. Now, listen, if you have a question and you want it answered from yours truly and my man Jeremiah over here, leave it in the comment section right down below. What you should also do, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, I don't know where on earth you've been, but there's the black bubble right in the middle of the screen that you should, of course, click. Before you leave, you should also go and follow Josh on his channel right over there. It's awesome. Go follow those weird Vikings from Legoland by clicking the green bubble somewhere over here. And finally, do not forget to leave a like on the video and spread the word. And with those words, I'm JayMike, and I approve this message.
See you next episode.
And P.S. I don't want to buy Greenland. I'm that guy.